you become a better problem solver.
Yes.
You start to know the questions to ask and the pitfalls to look for.
Right.
And that's just from the
2, 1. And hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Hello Haymarket. On today's episode, we have my lovely co-host, Elize Hill, joining us today with one of our good friends and very experienced agents, Queen Alubukala, also known as Buky. And we're very lucky to have Buky here today because we wanted to answer the following question, right? Elize, we wanted to know, how can you identify a good agent to work with? You know, they say, what do you bring to the table? Well, we are the table, right? We bring all the references, we bring all the experience to the table. We do these transactions every day, whereas most people only do a real estate transaction on average every 5 to 7 years. So we thought to ourselves, this is clearly going to be an important question that a lot of our listeners out there will want to understand. How do I find a good agent? How can I see the warning signs if they're a bad agent? And we thought the best person to bring in to talk about this is someone with, 17 years experience? How many years now?
18 going on 19
years, going on 19 years of experience. She knows what she's doing consistently every week. When we look at the numbers on our team, there's always one agent just ahead of me in terms of productions, and it is our lovely guest today. So Buky, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Can you give a little bit of your backstory today for those people out there who want to kind of get to know you a little better and why you might be a good person to speak to this subject?
Sure. So I got started in real estate when I was 12 in 2004.
I mean, the math adds up, right?
Yeah.
So I have been doing this since 2004. Prior to getting into real estate, I was a dispatcher for the Virginia State Police. Got into real estate, been with Keller Williams for the whole time that I've been in real estate. I am with a Reston office at Keller Williams and joined the CAZA Group in 2019. So I've been here with CAZA for 3 years. What else do you want to know?
Do you want to answer that?
I have a question.
Yes.
So being a dispatcher, what eventually led you to, hey, I'm going to start real estate? Like, what was that transition? What was that defining moment where you were just like, nope, I'm doing this now?
Mm-hmm. How did I fall into real estate? Accidentally. Totally by accident. Like a lot of people out there, I think I stayed up late one night and I saw an infomercial about investing in real estate, and like a lot of other people, I thought, oh, I should invest in real estate. So I shared that with a friend, and he put me in touch with his friend who was a realtor, still is a realtor, and she said, oh, you want to invest in real estate? You should get your real estate license. That'll make it all easier.
Yeah.
Not usually the case, but you don't need a license to invest in real estate. But so I said, okay. And I took my test and I got into real estate, knew nothing about real estate at that time.
Yeah.
But based on her recommendation, I took the test and I got in. And then I fell in love with it. Fell in love with helping people buy and sell homes. Fell in love with helping people build wealth in real estate.
Yeah.
Fell in love with the flexibility of being able to choose who I work with or don't work with, and, you know, different things like that. Flexibility and building wealth, helping others build wealth.
Yeah,
That's awesome. Now, you and I were talking last week about one of your prior clients, and I thought that this story would be a perfect one to bring onto the podcast because it really personifies or exemplifies the difference between a good agent and a bad agent.
Yes.
Because this poor individual was having a very rough go at it working with another agent before they came into working with you.
Yeah.
So would you kindly share that story with us?
Yeah, I will. And I'll take it a step further and just quantify and say a very inexperienced agent. Yeah, and the reason that I say that is she was his family member. She had his best interests at heart to the best of her ability. So she was a part-time agent. His family member worked a full-time job, and he was looking for a home in the height of the market in 2021 when everybody was looking for a home. The interest rates were super duper low. Everybody wanted to buy a house. The problem was, you know, she took him to multiple homes. They wrote 17 offers by the time that he was introduced to me, and he did not get a single one. Yeah.
That's a lot of heartbreak
it's
to deal with.
It's a lot of heartbreak, yeah. Yeah, it is. And that's how he got introduced to me. He was heartbroken, and he gave up on looking for real estate in Virginia, which is where she was licensed. I'm licensed in Virginia and Maryland, and he decided he just wasn't cut out to get a home in Virginia. He thought it was him. He was introduced to me to help him find one in Maryland. So I had my initial consultation with him. I asked him lots of questions, and a good agent will ask you lots of questions, profound questions, and really dig deep and find out what your motivation is. I mean, what came up was, it wasn't really him. Virginia wasn't the problem. One of the questions that I asked him was, what was the best offer that you put forth out of all these 17? And he told me, and there were so many things that could have been done better, a little more creative. What he learned from that, from our conversation, was sometimes a part-time agent who isn't doing what we do every single day and isn't around peers, isn't around the office because they're at their full-time job, they don't have the conversations. They don't do the research. They don't know what's going on in the market. They haven't realized that this is a market where people were waiving contingencies or paying above the appraised value. So it makes it difficult for them to advise their clients to do those things because they don't know that those things are going on, and it's the new norm. So her client, who became my client, was at a disadvantage. Another thing is, he thought that the tax value of the home was the value of the home, the market value. And in the market where he was looking, the areas where he was looking, the tax value was significantly lower than what the market value was and than what people were paying. So he was afraid to go over the asking price because he thought that he would have to pay the difference, an appraisal gap between the tax value and whatever he was offering. He was willing to do that, but he thought the gap was a lot bigger and he couldn't do that. So if he'd been educated, he would have made better offers.
Yeah. Let's dig into that just for a moment. So a lot of people who are not familiar with how those tax evaluations are established in Northern Virginia, they're set in January, and they're not updated again until the next year. And even at the time that they're set, they tend to still be less than the market value. At least how a realtor would determine market value. So the idea that that would be his anchor point for trying to establish value on a home is already setting him at such a disadvantage.
Such a disadvantage.
Right?
Yeah.
Because he would be operating under a false belief that the home was actually worth far less and that it was going to cost him far more than it really would.
Yeah. He was willing to pay more, and he was willing to pay out of pocket, just not that much. But he wouldn't have had to. So his offers could have been better from even just a price standpoint. So he was at a disadvantage there already. When it comes to waiving appraisals and home inspections, you know, it depends on the buyer's risk tolerance, and there are a lot of other factors that go into that. But he was willing to waive the appraisal to a certain point. But he didn't get that opportunity because
he didn't know.
He didn't know. And just from asking a couple of questions, I found out very quickly that that was what he was thinking. And then I was very quickly able to get him out of that mindset and explain where values come from. Yeah. And even just helping him feel comfortable that when he made an offer on a property, that we would look at the comps and help him determine the best price. So that made him feel comfortable.
One of the things that you said that I want to actually circle back to was comparing a full-time agent to a part-time agent, right? And this is a very competitive, high-stakes game that we are playing. And it's hard to imagine that some people don't realize the mistake that they're making when they're hiring a part-time agent. Now, a part-time agent could be very skilled. They could have a lot of experience behind them. Imagine any other a sport, a competitive sport, and you take someone and you're going up to do a professional game, right? And you're bringing your brother because he plays basketball on the weekends. And it's like you're not going to win against the professionals. with your brother who plays it on the weekends,
Yeah.
right? Like, he doesn't understand what's going on. And so for us here, being in the office every day, I remember my first year in real estate, just coming into the office and being surrounded by all these people like you, like Matt, like Rob, who could answer any question I could possibly have. And more importantly, they were able to tell me things that I didn't know, right? And just being in the environment through osmosis, absorbing, hearing.
I was gonna say that.
Hearing all the other most experienced agents talking and telling their stories about, I just closed a deal this week and here was the challenge and here's how I overcome it. Like, you become inundated with solutions that you don't have to reinvent the wheel because you're already in the environment, just surrounded by all these answers.
Yeah. And to piggyback off of that, you know, you said you're surrounded or you get inundated by solutions. And then your brain starts to work better. You start to come up with solutions. You become a better problem solver.
Yes.
You start to know the questions to ask and the pitfalls to look for.
Right.
And that's just from being in the environment.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely. I mean, if you're going into surgery, you'd rather have the surgeon who does this every day than the one who showed up last week.
That's what I was going to bring up. It's like, instead of a competitor, like in sport, it's just a surgeon. Do you want a part-time surgeon or like a full-time, this is his profession?
I'll take Derek Shepard or Addison Montgomery.
I don't understand that reference.
I think it's Grey's Anatomy.
It is Grey's Anatomy.
So let's continue the story though, Buky. So you have a new client that you're working with. He's decided he's given up on his dream of getting a home in Virginia, and he's decided to work with you because you're licensed in Maryland. You start asking him these insightful questions, and you start realizing that he has not received the kind of advice that was available, right? It wasn't available to him because he hadn't met you yet. So pick up from there. What happens next?
So we had our initial consultation. He decided that Virginia was just out. Of course, I gave him the option of, if you still like to look in Virginia, I can help you or she can help you. You know, you choose. And he decided that he was going to move his search to Maryland. We looked at a couple of houses. We made an offer on a house, and he got it. The very first house we made an offer on. But a lot of it is, he was a motivated buyer. He was ready. He had the ability. He just didn't have the advice.
Right.
He could have gotten at least one of those houses in Virginia. Yeah, he could have.
17 is a lot of offers. It shouldn't take that many tries. No.
Not with the right agent, at least.
Right. And again, even with the agent that he was working with, she had his best interest at heart to the best of her ability.
Right.
She didn't know what she didn't know.
Yes.
And very often, buyers and sellers don't know that their agent doesn't know what they don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's go into some examples of some of the things that you would ask someone as an agent, asking a client, to kind of help them learn. Like, well, what was going wrong with those 17 offers, right? So we talked about, he thought the tax assessment was an accurate representation of its market value, which is not true. What else was discussed or could be discussed?
So in that particular market, we discussed his risk tolerance, because in that market, buyers had to do things that they normally wouldn't have to do, that they wouldn't have to do in today's market. You know, are you able to pay your own closing costs as opposed to relying on the seller to pay them for you? In that market, you had to pay your own closing costs. So you either had to have the money or there had to be a program. In this particular case, actually, I put him in touch with a lender that put him into a first-time buyer program where his down payment or part of his closing costs, one or the other, was covered through the program. So there was a grant program that he didn't know about before, so that allowed him to do more with the cash that he had saved up. Because he did have money saved up for a down payment and closing costs, but because we were able to get him the grant, he was able to do things like cover an appraisal gap. He didn't have to with the home that he ended up buying, but he would have had that option in Virginia had he known about those programs.
Now, did you learn about that program during your test to get licensed?
I learned about meets and bounds during my test to get licensed.
My point there for the listeners who may not have caught it is that you don't come out with a license knowing these things, right? This is something that you pick up on through experience, through your network, meeting people, shaking the right hands, learning about the opportunities that are not common knowledge, right?
Yeah. So out of everything that was happening, I mean, 2020 and just that whole COVID time, it was 2020, 2021. It was a crazy market. Everything had to be a certain way. What were you bringing to the table that maybe his part-time agent wasn't doing well enough?
Speed, not the drug. Not the drug. But speed. His other agent worked during the day, and in that market, when a house hit the market, you had to get there.
Yes.
You had to get there quickly.
Yes.
In some cases, they would take an offer or look at an offer early.
Yeah, before it launched.
Yeah, before it launched. So you had to have speed, and you had to be able to write the offer quickly as well. You know, writing an offer, it takes time.
Oh, yeah. I remember one of the reasons why I kind of joined Daniel is like he would go to showings and he would call me and be like, hey, can you write this offer up for me? That way we can submit it tonight or like in a couple of hours.
Yeah.
So that was very helpful for us.
I not to steal the limelight right now, but
Steal
one of the
it.
things that Elize and I do very well together as partners is that she runs my schedule very well. We would have at one point like 20, 25 buyers active at the same time. And so I would wake up not even knowing what my schedule was yet, but just opening up my Google Calendar and seeing my day packed with appointments. And I would have to just go to all of those, and I would have no time to write the offer myself. Elize would have to be the one writing up 1, 2, 3 offers in the day, and then I would be able to discuss them with the client. But the actual act of writing them takes time, and then going back and double checking it to make sure there's no errors. And then there's just so many moving pieces, and so if you're slow in that market, just like you're saying, you can't win because a faster person's going to beat you there.
Yeah, and you only have so many hours in a day. Like, first of all, I can't imagine working with 25 buyers. I don't think I would have survived that. That's a lot. That's a lot of work. But you're right. Having someone like Elize is awesome. So let's talk later.
We'll set something up.
But so, imagine you find the house that you're in love with and you want to go see it immediately because you know there's 20 other motivated buyers that are also going to fight you for that house. But you can't because your agent works part-time. They're still at their primary job and they're not going to have time to show it, let alone walk you through the negotiations or write the contract
or answer
get
the phone
it revised,
call.
Right? All of that's going to have to wait until after hours. And by then it may be under contract.
Right. So I don't know if you guys experience this, but when I've worked with buyers like that, that fall into that category that you just described, some of them feel bad. They feel bad, or, they're good people. They're good people, so they respect that agent's time. And they don't want to be demanding. And I get it. I love people that are that are compassionate. I really do. But when it comes to buying the biggest investment of your life, sometimes you have to put that aside and work with the person that's going to get you what you need, because that could be the difference between being able, 17 offers ago, the prices were so different.
That's right.
It cost them a lot of money.
That's right. Just the fact that you delay a single month in that market, right? 2020, 2021, every single month, prices were going up in the aggregate. So buying the same house just 1 year later is going to cost you like 10-15% depending upon the area that you were in.
Even 6 months later.
It was so fast.
2021.
And so depending on the price point that they were looking in, that could amount to tens of thousands of dollars or more even.
Not to mention like the days on markets were like far less and far fewer than what it is.
Negative one.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I can definitely remember seeing a house come up as coming soon status, where it's going to launch at the 1st of next month. And then the very next day it was under contract. And people had bid on it sight unseen.
And remember, the listing agents were saying, oh no, we're not going to accept an offer before we launch. Unless
it's a really good
amazing
offer.
And the next thing you know, it's under contract. And
and there's just things like that you're not aware of, right? There's a lot of agents out there who are experienced, who have been in the game for decades, but maybe they're not active recently. And if they weren't active recently, they'll be behaving in a way that was appropriate a decade ago. And
so true.
And that could get you in trouble as well, right? So being plugged in really matters.
Being plugged in really matters. And to your point, just because someone's been in the market for 18 years, I've been in for 18 years, doesn't mean that they are experienced. They might have done one transaction a year for 18 years or taken a break. So it's really important to know that they are actively working with buyers and sellers a lot.
And that actually brings up another point. Your people seem to love you, Buky. I don't know what it is about you.
I'm lovable.
But the reason I say that is because you are a Keller Williams agent and always have been.
Yes.
All brokerages are not equal, just like all agents are not equal. I will draw a comparison between us and Redfin as an example. Right? A Redfin agent gets paid $2,000 a month, which means you could be a terrible agent, potentially. You could be a great agent, or you could be a terrible agent, but either way, you could stay in the business because you're getting fed. If you're a KW agent and you're a terrible agent, you will be out of business in no time because there's no one feeding you. You only get paid the deals that you can actually succeed and close on your own and that you got to source on your own. So for you to have survived as a KW agent for almost 2 decades is a testament to what a great job you do. And even just before we're getting started today, you were telling me about how almost all of your business these days is by referral, right? It's people who have worked with you on 1, 2, 3 transactions already, and they keep coming back to you because they know that you have not just their best interests at heart, but that you can get the job done.
And I am so fortunate that when I was early in the business, I aligned myself with a coaching company by referral only, and they teach how to treat people. Because remember, I was in my 20s when I got into real estate.
No, you were 12.
I was 12. I was 12 when I got into real estate. And I knew not too much about growing a business. I was a solo agent. I didn't have the benefit of having the CAZA Group to kind of grow me up in the business. So I aligned with by referral only, which kind of gives some of the same type of benefits as agents on our team, having people that have gone before you that teach you the business. And so that is the company that kind of taught me how to treat my clients so that they felt well taken care of and felt like I was referable. Because people might like you, but they might not feel like you're referable unless you're treating them a certain way and making them feel a certain way and doing certain things and providing a certain level of value.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So Buky, how did it resolve, right? You were able to help get this guy under contract on your first attempt with the correct advice, right? Looking back on that story, what would be the takeaways, right? If he was to do this all over again, starting from scratch, what are maybe the red flags that a buyer should look for to try to avoid the wrong agent? Or what are the green flags to attract you to the right agent?
Well, green flag, if your agent doesn't have a consultation, just an initial consultation with you and ask questions and listen, maybe even write down your answers. To me, well, I said green flag.
Yeah, that's what you want to see.
That's what you want to see. So if you're not seeing that, that's a red flag. They should be asking you questions, profound questions, deep questions to really get to the root of what you're looking for and your goals. And then, for me, the next step is crafting a game plan for that buyer so that we have a path to get to that goal. So those are green flags for me. Red flags, communication is very important. If your agent isn't communicating with you frequently, then that could be a red flag that they just don't have time.
Yeah.
They should be following up with you. And for me, I talk to my clients about what they expect. Then I live up to that expectation or exceed it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm hearing some of the red flags are if they're part-time, look a little deeper, find out if they're plugged in or not, right?
Yeah.
I'm hearing if they are unprepared, right? They're not showing that they're interested in you, right? If their whole pitch is like, hey, I'm the best, I'm interesting, maybe that's not what you want. And maybe you'd rather have someone who's going to be like, well, I'm here interested in you. Right? That would be more of a green flag. You mentioned also someone who's able to move quickly, right?
Yeah.
Who's perhaps in the office. Now, how is someone going to know if that person's in the office or if they do a lot of business? Because as you said, years in the business could be a good thing, right? If they're a brand new agent, that could be a red flag, a little indication to look deeper into it and find out what's going on there. But just because they're experienced doesn't automatically mean that they're a good agent.
It doesn't. And just because they're brand new doesn't mean that they're not.
Do you ever use a third-party site to find out the stats on someone? For example, you gave an example of two people. Maybe they're both 10 years in the business, but one of them may have done 10 times the business of the other, right? 10 times the actual experience. Do you use anything to find out that information?
So I actually show clients when I go and meet with sellers or buyers, I will refer them to HomeSnap because we all know that we can pull data ourselves and make it look like what we want it to look like.
Yeah.
We can manipulate data. So when I send them to HomeSnap, they're pulling up HomeSnap, and HomeSnap does all the work behind the scenes, not me. So I can send them to HomeSnap to look at the data for themselves.
Yeah.
So,
Gotcha.
yeah.
So you're saying if you're sitting down and interviewing an agent and the agent lays this stack of paper on you and says, I'm the best because look at my stats.
Yeah.
And then you can say, okay, wonderful. Let me pull up HomeSnap, get a third party opinion, and we'll see how HomeSnap's numbers line up with what they're telling me.
Exactly. Exactly, because HomeSnap pulls all the data from the same places for the most part that we
from the
pull
source.
data. Now, in some cases, there are things that HomeSnap doesn't have access to. So, for example, on our team, we sell a lot of off-market properties.
Yes.
And sometimes that data doesn't make it into the MLS.
Yeah.
So I come prepared with that information as well. But HomeSnap will give you a good general overview of transactions that agent is doing that are in the MLS.
Right.
Ask your agent questions.
Yes.
Ask them questions about their experience, about their availability. It's okay if your agent doesn't work 24 hours a day. I certainly don't work 24 hours a day. But ask them what you can expect. Ask them if they work after hours or, if they shut off after a certain time.
Yeah.
And it's okay if your agent does that. However, just keep in mind that when it comes to certain parts of the transaction, especially when you're negotiating a deal, time kills all deals.
Yes.
So, you have to be able to move quickly. And sometimes that might mean that I am working at 11 p.m. It's not the norm, but I can pivot as needed to make sure that the deal happens for my client.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things that you should look for in an agent too, is that they're available when needed. Like I remember we had an offer that we were waiting for, and we stayed up until like 1 a.m.
I once negotiated on behalf of my buyer client until 3 a.m. He went to sleep out of over a dozen buyers contending for the house. I got us the deal.
Nice.
He proceeded to ignore me the entire following day.
Oh.
The deadline was 6 p.m. If I could not get him to sign by 6 p.m., they were going to take someone else's offer. And he reached back out to me at 7.
Where was he? Was he ghosting you, or was he just tied up?
I think what it was like
I'm
a
gonna
family
give
decision.
him Yeah, I think it was a family decision, but he did later wish that he had gotten that house. So, but the point of the story is not the buyer. His life has to come first. His family has to come first. That was the right thing to do for him. But find someone who makes sure that they will put you first, right? Like, as a realtor, I do my best to put my clients first, not just because under Virginia law it's my obligation, but also because it's important to me. I want to sleep well at night, and I would not have been able to go to sleep that night knowing that there was more I could have done for my client.
Yeah. Well, sorry it happened that way. Did he ever find a house? Were you able to get him
We
something?
are still searching, and he is still haunted by the dream of the house that almost was.
Where was it? Was it Reston? I might have something.
We'll talk later.
I think it's also important that the buyer understands his role in picking the agent. Like, one of the things is make sure that the agent asks questions, but I think it's also on the buyer to listen and hear what questions they're actually asking. For example, Buky had asked, what were you offering? What was your best offer out of all these 17 ones that you submitted? I think that was a very important question. It's like, all right, what if he was talking to someone else and they didn't ask that question?
Right. Yeah, and I think if they didn't ask that question, they would have gotten frustrated that he felt he didn't want to offer the asking price because he thought that the asking price meant that he would have to cover an appraisal gap. So they would have gotten frustrated and seen him as an unmotivated buyer. And, you might have heard the phrase, buyers are liars, and they would have seen him that way, and that really wasn't the case. He was acting based on his level of understanding because he had not been educated by a professional. He just didn't know. He was willing to make strong offers.
He just didn't have the information.
Thought he was making the strongest
guidance.
he could.
So, Buky, one of the statistics that's sort of like an open secret in real estate is that most people, usually depending on what year it is, it's like 60-70% of people will hire the first agent they interview, right? Which is an indicator for me that they're basing their decision less on the interview itself and more on the relationship, right? And so as you are thinking about working with your brother, working with your cousin, working with the person who gave you a gift basket on Christmas, right? What are the sorts of things that you would think about before you make that final decision to sign and work with?
That's a good question. So I would take it back to the things that we talked about before, asking them questions. And like, you mentioned, a lot of buyers just don't know the questions to ask. They come in contact with a realtor because that realtor is connected to a house that they like. And if that realtor is nice enough, or, just jumps in and shows them the house, then they keep on moving forward with that realtor. So sometimes time covers all, what's the word I'm looking for, flaws or inexperience. And what I mean by that is in those situations, sometimes that house, that first house that realtor shows them is the house that they end up buying. Because all markets aren't crazy like 2020, 2021 were. So they end up buying that house and they have no idea that person was inexperienced. What happens sometimes, because I've had buyers come to me that started to work with someone, they called someone, they went and looked at that house, they didn't like that house, so they had to look at other houses. And then they started to realize through the process that this person either didn't communicate well, didn't have time with them, never showed them or sent them any properties that matched what they were looking for. They start to realize these things with time. But in some cases, they've already signed a contract with the agent.
And then they're
stuck. So they're stuck. My buyers aren't stuck with me, sellers too. As a matter of fact, in my contract, they have the ability to cancel the contract. I don't hold them hostage. Because for me, I want to create an environment that they want to be part of. And it helps me step up. It helps me meet their expectations because if I'm not meeting their expectations, my contract says they can cancel at any time and there's no penalty. So I don't want to put in lots and lots and lots and lots of work and have them cancel at the last minute. And I will say the majority of people don't cancel. We've all had buyers that come from the internet, people that we don't know that ghost us from time to time. Maybe their credit isn't quite right, or their circumstances changed and they feel bad about telling you that things changed. And then they just ghost you. That happens to all of us. But for the most part, my motivated clients that sign a contract with me don't cancel the contract, because I create an environment that shows them that I am the right professional for them. And we take it all the way to the finish line.
Awesome. Well, Buky, thank you so much for joining us today. I think we covered a lot of different ground there on helping people see, even just through example, through that story, how critical it is to find an agent that is the right fit for you, who's going to be able to arm you with the right advice to go into your real estate transaction. I just really thank you for sitting down with us today.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. This was fun.
Yeah, awesome. And for anybody who wants to connect with you or reach out to you, how can they do so?
You can reach me by phone, 703-400-8932, on Instagram or Facebook, Buky Delle, and that's BUKYDELLE. And then email Buky, BUKY, at thecazagroup.com. And CAZA is CAZA.
Awesome. Buky, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And all of her contact will be in the description down below.
Absolutely. All right. Bye, everybody.
So I didn't have to spell it all out.